Hi everyone, it's a great day to be back. Here is some of our latest news for you with me, Vanessa. The Speaker of the House urged all entities to work together as a team for Timor-Leste's accession to ASEAN.
The Speaker of the House of Timor-Leste's National Parliament, Aniceto Guterres Lopez, raised the idea in a parliamentary symposium at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation Office. Guterres encouraged all entities to work together as a strong team and comply with the script that ASEAN members attributed to Timor-Leste. He, Guterres, also appeals for all state institutions to set aside self and institutional ego during the process of accession to the ASEAN, leaves all the differences behind which can become an obstacles. We must work hard. All the ministerial leaders, the state institutions, must make the maximum efforts to comply with the script which the ASEAN members indicated to Timor-Leste. And we all hope that in 2023 we can become the ASEAN member. I call for all state institutions to get rid of the sectoral and institutional ego during our preparation for the accession, leaves all the differences behind which can become as obstacles for our accession process into the ASEAN. On the other hand, the General Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation also added that the symposium is a starting point in order to share information and exchange knowledge to accommodate perspectives and coordination from everyone to move forward for Timor-Leste being the member of ASEAN next year. We must acknowledge this, since this is an important milestone in the ASEAN accession process. It is necessary to strengthen the cooperation and coordination of everyone, uphold our nation and desire to being a part of a very dynamic regional organization. As a starting point, everyone at the current level, before heading to the integration part, we should at least consider what we are going to do, evaluate the current situation now on, until Timor-Leste become the ASEAN member. Presently, Timor-Leste is the ASEAN member with an observer status after the November 11, 2022 through ASEAN high-level meetings for 40th and 41st, and the ASEAN nation members in Cambodia approved Timor-Leste's membership as the 11th member with an observer status.
At least more than 20 people dead after landslide. Rescue teams continue search for Malaysia landslide victims.
Almost 400 personnel from several agencies were deployed for search and rescue efforts that were ongoing after a landslide in Malaysia that has killed more than 20 people at the campsite. The State Fire and Rescue Department said in a statement that the landslide in Selangor State, on the outskirts of the capital Kuala Lumpur, tearing down a hillside into an organic farm with a camping site facility. According to the Fire and Rescue Department State Director, the landslide came down from an estimated height of 30 meters or 100 feet above the campsite and covered an area of about 1 acre.
Malaysian survivors are shocked by the terror of the landslide.
Survivors of Malaysian disaster described how a landslide wiped out their shelters and killed at least 21 people. Children were among the victims, sleeping in tents at an unlicensed campsite. The landslide in Selangor State, which borders the capital Kuala Lumpur, happened at the early hours as mud and earth tore down a hillside into an organic farm that officials said was operating the campsite illegally. The disaster struck about 50 km or 30 miles north of Kuala Lumpur in Batang Kali, just outside the popular hilltop area of Genting Highlands, known for its resorts, waterfalls, and natural beauty. Pictures posted on the Father's Organic Farm Facebook page show with a large area where tents can be set up. Landslides are common in Malaysia, but typically only after heavy rains. Flooding occurs often, with about 21,000 people displaced last year by torrential rain in 7 states.
Philippine artist paints with his own blood for decades.
Filipino artist Elito Circa has literally been pouring his own sweat and blood into his paintings, and the medium he uses has raised a few eyebrows for decades. Sirka uses his own blood, all freshly drawn, dripped and dipped from brush to canvas. The 52-year-old artist said that it was a mix of circumstances arising from a lack of resources and poverty that forced him to start using his own blood as paint.
Dahil nun bata pa naman nun, di pagdodrawing muna, so uling sakalan ginagamit.
When I was a kid and wanted to draw, I started using charcoal, firstly because there was nowhere to buy commercial materials during that time. If anyone wanted to buy supplies, they would have to travel 5 to 6 hours before they could get to the next town. That's how hard life was for us back then.
6 na oras bago ka makarating sa susunod na pamayanan. So ganun kahirap nung panahon namin nun.
Sirka wanted to paint and started trying out materials that effectively stained cloth canvases. Sirka gets his blood drawn professionally at a local town healthcare center once every 3 months, usually in increments of 500 milliliters. He keeps the drawn blood in a cooler in his studio for future projects. He aims to paint the largest blood painting ever on a 100-meter canvas with hopes to setting new world record in 2023.
Still in shock, Malaysia landslide families attend funerals.
One of the victims in Malaysia's deadly landslide was buried at a cemetery near Kuala Lumpur after the tragic incident. The family of Nurul Azwani binte Kamarul Zaman said they were still processing the sudden news of her death. Nurul was one of the 24 who died when a landslide flattened the unlicensed campsite at Batang Kali, a popular hilly area about 50 kilometers or 30 miles north of the capital, while people slept in their tents. Those killed included 7 children. Nurul's younger sister Nur Hazita said the family was devastated by victims, especially her only daughter who was very close to her aunt. Selangor State Fire and Rescue Chief Nur Azam Kami said the chance of finding more survivors was slim given the lack of oxygen and weight of mud pressing down on the site. Landslides are common in Malaysia but typically only after heavy rains. Flooding occurs often, with about 20,000 people being displaced last year by torrential rain in 7 states.
Russia Defense Ministry says Russian strategic bombers patrol over Sea of Japan.
Russia's defense ministry said that 2 Russian Tu-95 strategic bombers carried out a 7-hour patrol flight over the Sea of Japan. The ministry said the bombers, capable of carrying nuclear bombs and nuclear-armed cruise missiles, were accompanied by Russian Su-class fighter jets. Even while bogged down thousands of miles away, in what Moscow calls its special military operation in Ukraine, Russia has continued to conduct regular strategic bomber flights as a show of strength to its neighbors in the Far East. Last month, it carried out joint patrols with China over the Sea of Japan and East China Sea. The defense ministry said the latest mission complied with international airspace rules and was part of regular flights over what it called the neutral waters of the Arctic, North Atlantic, Black and the Baltic Seas, and the Pacific Ocean.
South Korea, United States, and Japan will coordinate sanctions on North Korea.
Seoul's envoy for the Korean Peninsula, Kim Gun, said South Korea, Japan, and the United States will coordinate sanctions and close gaps in the international sanctions regime against North Korea. United States Special Representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, said at a meeting in Jakarta the behavior of Pyongyang presented one of the most serious security challenges to the region and beyond.
Alliance and the trilateral security cooperation.
Meanwhile, Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Director General for Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau, Funakoshi Takehiro, said the 3 allies will examine all options including counter-strike capabilities and be more vigilant against North Korea's cyber threat.
The most serious security challenges in
the sanctions follow a November 18 intercontinental ballistic missile test by North Korea, part of a spate of more than 60 missiles launches this year, and amid concerns that it may be about to resume nuclear weapons testing, which has been suspended since 2017.
United Nations shelves bid by Afghan Taliban and Myanmar junta for representation.
May I take it?
The United Nations General Assembly approved postponing for the second time a decision on whether the Afghan Taliban administration and the Myanmar junta can send a United Nations ambassador to New York.
The committee had before it 2 communications each concerning the representation of Myanmar, the representation of Afghanistan, and the representation of Libya to the 77th session of the Assembly. The committee decided to postpone its consideration of the credentials pertaining to the representatives of Myanmar, Afghanistan, and of Libya to the 77th session of the General Assembly, and to revert to consideration of these credentials at a future time in the 77th session.
The 193-member General Assembly approved without a vote the decision by the UN Credentials Committee, which also deferred a decision on rival claims to Libya's United Nations seat. The 9-member committee includes Russia, China, and the United States. The postponement of decisions on Myanmar, Afghanistan, and Libya leaves the current envoys in place. Credentials Committee said it could revert the consideration of these credentials at the future in the 77th session of the General Assembly, which ends in September next year. Competing claims were again made for the seats of Myanmar and Afghanistan, with the Taliban administration and Myanmar's junta pitted against envoys of the governments they ousted last year. UN acceptance of the Taliban administrations or Myanmar's junta would be a step toward the international recognition sought by both. A rival claim was also made this year for Libya's UN seat, currently held by the Government of the National Unity in Tripoli, by a Government of National Stability led by Fatih Bashaga and backed by a parliament in the country's east. Myanmar's junta seized power from Aung San Suu Kyi's elected government in February 2021.
United States and Russia firms to sell weapons to Vietnam at first Hanoi fair.
United States and Russia defense firms displays weapons and promoted models of aircraft at Vietnam's first large-scale arms fair as the two powers vie for influence and arms sales in the strategic Southeast Asian country that borders China. The event at an airbase in the capital Hanoi attracted 174 exhibitors from 30 countries, including all large arms-making nations except China, as Vietnam signaled its interest in diversifying military procurements and possibly starting export of its own weapons. United States Ambassador in Vietnam, Mark Napier, told media on the sidelines of the event that the arms fairs represent a new stage in Vietnam's efforts to globalize, diversify, and modernize, and the United States want to be part of it. He adds, the United States wanted to boost its military cooperation with Vietnam, limited mostly to Coast Guard ships and trainer aircraft, and was ready to discuss its defense needs, especially on maritime capabilities. Then Russia is by far the main weapons supplier to Vietnam, covering 80% of its needs, but its appeal has decreased recently, while the Ukraine war could constrain its defense exports and sanctions deter potential buyers.
Thank you very much, everyone. Well, we wish you a very happy Christmas with your loved ones. Enjoy this festive season. Stay safe, stay healthy. We will see you all soon.